And he cuts through the ropes, and the tiny little ships, they drop into the mad sea. You're not believing my boat. Now, Paul, what do you have to say? He said, if you listen to me, here's what we do. And they had dropped anchor, and they could see something off in the distance, but they weren't sure what it was because of the storm. And he said, tell the crew to eat up everything because they're going to need their strength. In the morning, we swim for the shore. And sure enough, they ate. And in the morning, the captain gave the order as the ship was starting to fall apart. He said, swim for your lives, swim to the shore. And if you don't know how to swim, grab parts of this boat and float yourself there. And sure enough, when he took the command, they all jumped ship and they took off toward the shore. And the captain, as he looked at his crew and all of his passengers laying there on the shore in the sand, and he started to count. 1, 2, 3, 59, 60, 61, 112, 113, 250, 251, 274, 275, 276. Not a person was lost. And Paul said, I told you so. That's Captain Kidd. That's costume characters. And they are fun to use. I normally, I'm going to hold on to everything because I'm wired too much and I'll get all tangled up, I'm afraid. He usually helps me get some of this off, but it's not going to happen today. Well, we're going to talk a little more about costume characters in a minute, but first of all, I want to welcome you to Going Live in 3, 2, 1. This is a workshop on storytelling, and we have the best story to tell. We have God's story to tell, and we are responsible for it. So we need to make sure that it is told in the best possible way where kids can engage in it and they will remember it for a lifetime. Now, long time ago, when I was a little one, Coca-Cola came in a glass bottle with a metal cap, and you popped it, and that's the only way you got it. And then they started putting it in 2-liter bottles, and everyone went, wow, that's kind of nice. And then they started putting it in little squatty cans, and I went, wow, if I just want a little, that's good. And then they put it in 1 liters, and then they put it in 16 ounces, and then they put it, and now during Super Bowl, you can get it in a little plastic football. At Christmas, you can get it in a pretty little ornament. But it was always the same product inside a different container. I don't know if you remember, but about 10 years ago, Coca-Cola announced, we're going to change our recipe. No one had said anything about the packaging. But when they started saying we're going to mess with the recipe, it was like the entire world went, no! You don't mess with what's inside. You don't mess with the content. You can package it different ways. And that's what storytelling is about. It's about packaging God's story in different ways, but don't mess with the content, okay? We always tell the story. We don't add another wise man that's not there. We don't add a talking rock. We don't add those things, but we always make sure that the content is there. We can package it in different ways that engage kids. So we want to talk about some of those ways. I want to tell you about my favorite resource, a resource that I would not tell a Bible story without having this as my prep. Got too many wires here. It is called Egermeyer's Bible Storybook. And this thing is probably in, I want to say it's in its 9th edition. I grew up on this. I think my mom grew up on this. But they just keep updating the words, so that it's more current language. It's not a Bible storybook that you just sit down and read to kids. This is your prep Bible storybook. If you look at it, there are pictures, but not that many. What this is 320 plus Bible stories that are completely biblically accurate. And it has been gone through by theologians, by Bible scholars in just about every denomination, and they all say, yep, it's biblically accurate. That's where I want to start. It gives you more idea what the narrative is, okay? I read the scripture, and each one of them tells you where this is found in scripture, the story, and then you read the story. Now, I make a copy of my Eggermeyer story that I'm going to present. And what I do then is I go through and I mark it. If there are special pirate words that I want to use in this story, then I do a little highlighting. I write in red on the side. And then when I'm going over it before I get in with the kids, I'm like, okay, I can picture that caption off to the side. Okay, that. And then when I go in to do the story, I leave it. Do not take it with you. Leave it, okay? Because if you take it with you, I don't care how well you have rehearsed and you know that story, you're going to go, I'm just afraid I'm going to leave something out. I'll go to it. And you will resort to it. If you don't have it, you have to actually use some brain power. There's a new one for you. We're going to use some brain energy. I am going to take the hat off there. Whew. Okay. But that is a wonderful resource. And then at the very end, it'll give you 3 or 4 questions to start doing your story reinforcement with. So it gives you something to start with. I just can't tell you. When I did my recruiting for my children's ministry team, and somebody said, yes, I'll be a teacher, I said, I am so excited that you're joining our team. Here's your Eggermeyers. Everyone on the team had their own. And they would look at me and go, okay, whatever, a Bible storybook. I said, just read it before every class. Make sure you read it before every class. And in about 2 months, they would always come back to me going, there's no way I would go in there to teach kids if I didn't have that first. So if you want to look at it further, there's some on our table over in the resource center, because I know you just want to go through it and go, okay, is this what I really want? But I just, out of all the things that I have available, you say, what one thing would you suggest? It's that. It's not the things that I've written. It's that book. So let's go on to costume characters, because I'm going to give you a lot of different things that you can use in storytelling. Now, at the end of each row, down here, over here, if you got one of these papers, what I'd like for you to do, just very discreetly so we don't even know that it's passing down the row, okay? I want you to write your name and your email, what part of the country you're from. Just tell me your town. And if you'd like to be included in my email newsletter, just put a little mark there, okay? I'd love to be able to stay in touch with you, but I won't without your permission. If you've already signed one, please go ahead and sign it again. Because if there's one that I can't read, I can hunt you down in a different workshop. Okay. So costume characters. You saw Captain Kidd. Now, Captain Kidd, each one of your characters will only tell one kind of story. Captain Kidd only tells stories that have to do with the high seas. With Treasure, now he's the one that would tell about the scripture of what we treasure in our hearts, okay? He's the one that would tell about shipwrecks, about storms at sea. When Jesus walks on the water, probably pull out Captain Kidd. And so each one has this area of stories that they tell. I would never change the costume. This is preschool version of Captain Kidd. Elementary version of Captain Kidd will give Johnny Depp a run for his money. Seriously, I have a picture, and I'm going, I look more like you than you do. Complete with the goatee and the beads and all the long hair and the scarf and the big black eye makeup and everything. But you do that with a preschooler and you'll have potty messes all over the place. So be careful, okay? Be appropriate. But always, I give each one of my costume characters a new voice, and you're going, I can't do voices like that. Oh, yes, you can. Just get in the bathroom, look in the mirror, and you can do this. And then you just practice in the mirror, and you go, whoa, I am looking like a pirate. Oh, I'm sounding like a pirate. I am a pirate. I am a pirate. Okay? Bring on the kids. Now, what I don't want you all going, now I've got to go home and I've got to find pirate costume because I've got to be Captain Kidd. No, what I want you to do today is I want you to go, okay, I don't have a pirate, but I do have this. And this is the perfect time of year. I want you all to take your calendars. Right now on your paper, I want you to say, I have an appointment on November 1st. You all have an appointment on November 1st. You're going shopping. Ooh, now I got your attention, didn't I? You are all going to the Halloween store. And you are going to buy all kinds of gems for 75% to 90% off. You don't know what, wigs and scarves and boots and belts and whatever. Whatever looks like it may have potential, get it. And you don't know, there's just all kinds of things that you can create with that. Now, I want to tell you, be on the lookout. Set this part of your brain that says, I'm looking for interesting things to wear. Because this right here is an ornament off my Christmas tree. I am not ashamed of the Word of God. Not even to the point that I will decorate myself like a tree. Okay? So I have some pictures of some of my other costume characters. So if you'll bring one up here. This is Winnie Wang. Winnie is very soft-spoken. She tells all her stories from her garden, where she loves to go and meet with God. She tells creation story. She tells story of Jesus going to pray in garden. She walks onto the stage very slowly. Beautiful kimono that someone in my church, I had two women that their ministry was being seamstresses for the children's ministry. They made this vest, they made my kimono, and so many more things. They were grandmothers that felt like they didn't have the energy to get in the classroom with the kids, but oh my goodness, they had a heart for their grandsons. And more than anything, they wanted their grandsons to come to the Lord. And every time they would see one of the costumes that they made, I know they were just praying, God, go in there with her and help her to tell your story to my boys. And so, Winnie Wang, this is Frito-Lay. Frito-Lay, and he has a little sidekick. It's a prairie dog puppet, and his name is Chico. So, we have the Frito-Lay company here. The next one is, this is Gertrude Frogbottom. She's a retired history teacher, and she has had everyone in her class, and she knows your stories, and she will tell them. She wears, put that back up there because I can't describe her without seeing her. She wears the knee-high little hose. They're usually falling down. Her slip is usually showing. It's not in this one. She wears a shawl, and she is padded to the hilt there. She wears a hanky, and she goes in after it sometimes. Digging for. She always wears that hat with fruit on her head. But she will tell the stories of history, of Joshua and how the armies were on two different mountains and yelling at each other and everything. And she tells all of that. And then she usually throws in a little story about, and I remember the day that you put your fist through the wall because you were mad about a test you took. That kind of thing. Another character is Chef Bakes a Lot. And she works for Food Network and has her own cooking show. And there's always a camera in the corner. And she makes all the children wave to it. So if you will at this moment, will you just wave at the camera, everyone? Come on, wave at the camera, suckers. Okay. This is a really interesting character because the costume is so stinking simple. It's a baker's hat and an apron. And Chef Bakes a Lot Okay? And what I do, actually, I have a new apron that has a great big glittery script E for Emerald on the front, just because she always talks about Emerald being her best friend. And so, what I do for preschoolers is this: I'll say, hey, kids, I've got to leave for just a moment. Can you just sit right there on your mats? I'll be right back. And I turn around, I put the apron on, I put the hat on, I may splash a little bit of flour on my face, and I turn around and I go, wow, hello, I'm shut. And they're like, oh. And then every time, after class is over, everybody's scurrying around the church and they haven't left yet, one of them will come up to me and go, I know who you are. That's a 4-year-old for you. Yeah, 3 or 4 years. I know. I'm like, really? I have bright children. Yeah, they're really quick. Yeah. So, do we have any more? Oh, well, this isn't me. But this is the resurrection angel. Now, when you're in children's ministry, people give you strange things. One day I went into my office and there were this set of feathered theatrical wings that they use on stage kind of thing with a note that said, just thought you'd like to have these. I have no idea where they came from. But we did an event called the Resurrection Angel Breakfast for Easter because we neglect Easter so badly. And so this is a children's ministry friend of mine, and I said, Joel, I'm going to go buy you a cheap white tuxedo. I need a pair of your shoes. I need a tie. I've got an old tie. I've got an old cell phone. I spray painted everything gold. His belt was gold. His tie was gold. His cell phone was gold. He had a gold megaphone, the whole 9 yards, and gave him a script. The script was like 2.5 pages long, single-spaced. He was supposed to be the angel that was there when Jesus came out of the tomb, okay? I was thinking, here's a script, just to go off of. He memorized that sucker word by word. I felt so guilty. And then after, I got over that real quick. Whoa, Joel. And he's telling me about, God called me and said, now, you been working out? I said, yeah, been working in God's gym. And he said, good. And I said, well, God, what do you want me to do? And he said, you'll know when I tell you. Just get ready. He said, so he sent me down. And I'm like, oh, my goodness. Jesus is dead. What do I do? And I'm standing there, and all of a sudden, I hear all heaven go, move that stone. And he goes, whoa. Yeah. He said, Jesus just came out of the tomb. He said, I was there. And he tells the story, and the kids are like, wow. Well, that whole event has a menu to it where it's Jubilee juice and the golden brick French toast sticks and the Crown of Jewels cocktail, and you have fruit cocktail with all that goes into this breakfast. We had little angels that were junior high that served all of it. We played angel bingo and won angel food cakes, and had a craft for the grandparents. This was all grandparents bringing their grandkids. They took a picture with the angel food, the resurrection angel, and we sent it to them as follow-up. So this whole thing, I'm a Christmas addict, but I always feel really bad that Easter is so neglected. There are 6 stories at Christmas. If you break it down, we can get 6 stories, and we spend 4 weeks on it. Between the time that Jesus comes into Jerusalem and his ascension, there are 27 individual stories, and we cram them into 2 weeks a lot of time. How confusing is that for kids? But it's also the week when interesting things happen. Like Jesus curses the fig tree. He gives the greatest commandment. It's when he says, give unto Caesar what is Caesar, and unto God what is God's. It's when the woman anoints him. We read I think it's only 1 healing during that time. He's giving them their last marching orders. And I want to elevate Easter. I wrote a whole book on things that you can do with each one of those stories called Easterific. And it has everything for that resurrection angel breakfast. Now, go to one of those tuxedo outlet places, and the tuxedos they're really cheap. They're cheaper to buy what's left over than to rent one. Mine, the one that we got him has a whole foot of extra leg in it. And so I just took packing tape, and it's hemmed like up around his knees. Because I don't know, my next resurrection angel may be 6'6". I don't know, but I want to be ready. I don't want to ruin that whole thing. So, okay, I think that's all of our costume characters. Let's move on. The next thing, another technique that you can use is just change the environment. Change your environment. Move the kids somewhere else. When I dress in Mary and I go over and I'll sit like at Easter time, I just get one of those landscaping rocks that go over the meters, those cheap little things. And I'll sit there. And my idea of creating a garden, because some of you who are in the multiple intelligences know that I'm not nature smart. My idea is I get a box of greenery and I take this cardboard box and I just give it a toss into the corner. And then I have another box that has flowers in it and I do the same thing. And I'm like, looks good to me. Okay, that's my garden. And it's a new environment. Instead of the kids gathering over here, they're just going to move to this end where there's flowers and there's plants and there's this rock. And it's interesting. Do you know that, well, I bet all of you sit in the same place when you go into worship. Many of you, just coming into general session, you've sat basically in the same place every time. It's like after you claim your territory, that's where you want to stay. Here's what happens, though. When you do that, each time you remember less and less. If you will get your rear end up from over there in church and you decide to sit over there, you will remember 75% more of what is going on. First of all, it's going to freak you out, freak somebody else out when you have that greeting time. If your church has that greeting time where let's stand up and greet people around you, that person in front of you is going to turn around expecting someone else, and they're going to go, ah, where'd you come from? We've got a visitor. How long have you gone to church here? 26 years, but I always sit over there. Oh, what possessed you to move here? You are going to hear things differently just because you're hearing it out of different speakers. You're going to notice the pastor has a mole on that side of his face that you didn't know about. You're going to be just enough uncomfortable with this new setting that you have to get used to that your mind is going to have to work. And it's going to have to take things in differently. So change up the environment. Same thing happens for kids. The more you do things in the same place, the more discipline problems you're going to have because they're going to get used to this space. Okay, I don't have to think about this. Oh, I can think about getting in trouble. I can think about picking on you and your space and all of that. So one day, I looked at my lesson and I thought, wow, got Zacchaeus lesson coming up. What am I going to do? Now, our church was, believe it or not, our church sat on Sycamore Street. Now, in northern Indiana, sycamore trees are huge. If there had been sycamore trees in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve would have used one of those leaves and not the fig leaf. They're massive leaves. But these trees are huge, and the parsonage was next door where we lived, and we had 4 of these giant sycamore trees in the front yard. And it's just right next door. It's just across like the driveway, and then there's the church. And I thought, yeah, we're going to use the sycamore tree. So I walked up to a guy. His name is Taff, and Taff loves kids, just loves kids. And I said, hey, Taff, I was wondering if you'd help in kids' church next week. And he goes, sure, Tina, whatever. And he starts to walk off. I said, Taff, no, hold on. I was just wondering, would you be willing to tell the story next week? Sure, just get it to me. I'll be, Taff, come here. Would you wear a costume? Just a biblical costume? I'll get it for you. Yeah, that's fine. Get me script, costume, I'm fine. I said, no. One more thing. He's like, what? Could you climb up in one of the sycamore trees to tell that? And he goes, what? I said, I need you to go next door and climb up in one of those trees in your costume and just wait. You'll know when it's time. I said, okay. So he got ready. He was over there. I'm leading the kids, and the whole wall behind me is these set of windows, and they can see outside into the parking lot. But it's just a gorgeous day. And all of a sudden, I just stopped, and I said, is that getting to you all like it is to me? I said, wouldn't you much rather be outside? And they're like, yeah. And I said, you know what? There is no reason we can't go outside and have our Bible story today. Would you all like to do that? Yeah. And I said, okay, but you know, we're gonna go over in the front yard of the parsonage, and we're gonna have to cross the driveway. So you all, I need a single file duck line. You follow Mama Duck, okay? And everybody just go over there, and we'll sit down under one of the trees, okay? Yeah. So I got them all lined up, and they were doing so good. Marching across there, got them right under that tree. I get them all there, and all of a sudden, Taft goes, hey! There he is up in the tree. He yells at him, and do we have the next picture of the kids? That's the picture that I got. They just sat down on it. And that's how they stayed the whole time. They didn't look around or anything. They were like, what is this guy doing? I said, who are you? He said, my name's Zacchaeus. And I said, what are you doing up there? And he goes, every once in a while, I just like to come sit up here and remember what happened to me on a really special day. I said, really? What was that? And he said, well, could I tell you guys about it? And the kids are going, yeah. And they knew Taft. But it's like, what are you doing up there? So that was 30 years ago. And in fact, one of those kids is his son. I don't know what was going through his head, but Chad was probably going, why is Dad up in the street? But still, I will run into these kids occasionally, and they have their own children now, and they'll go, you remember the day when we went over under the tree and Zacchaeus was up in the tree? And I said, oh, yes, I remember. Now, you can't do that every week. In fact, I couldn't do that again for a couple of years because word got out around the church that if Tina asks you to climb a tree, don't do it. Taft definitely wasn't going to do it again. But we got a new youth pastor who had not heard the story. And sure enough, look who's up the tree. Hi, Calvin. Went through exactly the same routine and got him up in that tree. But just change out your environments to make it interesting for your kids. The next thing that you can do is add a rhyme. We talked about this a little in the Multiple Intelligences workshop, but some of you were not there, so I want to just tell you a different one. Putting, oh, yeah, we got extra sticks. Here, front row, pass those out so that just the people around you have two, so I just have a little more. I need my backup tappers. Yeah. And I don't know why, but I brought one lone chopstick. All right. Got 2 sticks. Here's what you do. This technique is good for stories that have something that repeats in them. Yesterday, I talked to you about the story where Jesus goes into the garden to pray, and he comes out and his disciples are asleep, and he does that 3 times. Well, you can also do it with the story of Paul. Paul's journeys, that is a really hard story to tell, but every place Paul goes, he tells the same message. So every time you talk about Paul going to a different place, you tell that message. You just have the rhyme that says Paul had a message. The message was the same. Every time he had a chance, Paul would preach in Jesus' name. And the kids do that. But I want to teach you one about a story that you probably don't tell your kids. And it's a story, but it's in Eggermeyer's, people. Stories you don't usually tell are in Eggermeyer's. This is the story of Elijah and the little white cloud. You know this story? There had been a drought for years, and King Ahab and all of his people were getting hungry because the crops wouldn't grow. And God told Elijah, I'm sending rain. And so Elijah took his servant, and he went up on a hill to look out at the sea to watch for the clouds that God was going to bring. Well, he sent his servant up to the hill, and Elijah kept praying. And the Bible says that Elijah prayed with his head between his knees. Elijah prayed with his head between his knees. Then he sent his servant off to search the skies above the seas. Now he sent that servant off. The servant came back and said, I don't see a cloud. And Elijah said, I'm going to keep praying. Go look again. The servant climbs the hill and he looks out over the sea and he comes back and he says, no cloud. Sorry, Elijah. Elijah said, I'm praying. Go on. Go look again. He does this 7 times until finally the servant comes back and he said, there's a cloud about the size of my fist. And Elijah said, wow, the rains are coming. And he went dancing down and told King Ahab, says he grabbed up his robe and went running faster than the horses on Ahab's chariot. So he was partying on, that's for sure. We're going to put this little rhyme up on the screen, and here's how it goes. Everybody, I just want you to clap along with this, and we've got our little stick people going. Let me do it once for you, and then we'll all join in. It's like this. Elijah prayed with his face between his knees. Then he sent his servant off to check the skies above the seas. So easy. That's as complicated as my poetry gets. And my rhythm, too. Okay? So everybody together, say it. Elijah prayed with his face between his knees. Then he sent his servant off to check the skies above the seas. One more time. Elijah prayed with his face between his knees. Then he sent his servant off to check the skies above the seas. Here's what I did with my preschoolers. I had half of them with the sticks. Now, some of you are going, okay, sticks and preschoolers. She has lost her mind. Okay, I would never put these in the hands of my kids. Here's what you do. Before I tell you about how we went on with this one. You put the sticks in a place. I always put them under their chairs. Anything, their craft kits, everything they were going to need for their lesson was under their chairs. And then we pulled them out one by one. Now, if they decided that they were going to pull their sticks out in an inappropriate time, we had a box. It was a timeout box. Not for the child, for the sticks. Okay? And so if they started going, I go, oh, now listen, I told you where you were supposed to stay. Didn't I, Megan? Uh-huh. And I said, so right now you're going to have to go sit in the timeout box for just a few minutes until you can remember that when you're supposed to come out and tap. Okay. You think that's good, Megan? Yeah. I said, can you put them in? Yes, I will. And she'll go over and put them in, and you stay there until you can be good. In a few minutes, I'll say, Megan, you think that your sticks are okay now? I'll go get them. Now, when I do say pull the sticks out, oh, that's permission, isn't to start. No, I say, attention. And this is where they stay. And I say, you can. I'm giving you permission. You can hit anything that you want to with those sticks as long as it comes between the sticks. So they'll test it the first time. And in about 6 seconds max, it gets tiring. And they're like, oh, that didn't feel good. Okay. But they will go, woo. That's okay. And then I say, okay, we're ready. Sticks in position. Okay. And so you make kind of a game maneuver kind of thing out of it. So then I taught them also, part of them were doing the sticks, and part of them were doing motions. And so it was, Elijah prayed with his face between his knees. So they were in their chairs, and they stuck their heads down in between their knees. Okay? They're all bent over like that. Elijah prayed with his face between his knees. Then he sent his servant off to search the skies above the seas. So we have, at the time they were 5, Bowen and Kendall are grand twins. We go out on the patio, and Kendall is sitting there in one of the patio chairs, and she's got her head down between her knees. And this was 2 weeks after I had taught that lesson. And I said, Kendall, what are you doing? Because I could hear her going, you know. What? And I said, Kendall, what are you doing? And she said, Elijah prayed with his face between his knees. Then he sent his servant off to search the skies above the seas. And I went, oh my goodness, she remembers it. You know why she remembered it? It went into long-term memory because it was rhythm, it was music. And she still remembers it. If I say, Elijah prayed, where was his head? Between the seas, and he sent his servant off to search the skies of the seas. So there, I'm going to take my sticks back. Right now, because my little preschool friend's down here, man. Now, I went to a big conference one time, and I took 220 of these and gave them out. And I looked around afterwards, and they'd all walked out the door with them. Not your present. So, in Going Live in 321, which is a storytelling technique book that I wrote, has 17 different storytelling techniques. There are more of those rhymes, but please, all you have to do is when you read your story that you're going to be telling, go, oh, this happens 3 times, this happens 4 times. When Jesus picks up his disciples, he does the same thing, says, hey, come on, follow me. That's basically the story over and over again. So every time he gets another disciple, what do? You have a little rhyme that talks about Jesus picking up the disciples. I'm trying to see. That one goes, every time Jesus approaches one of the guys, then all the kids say, he left his business and walked away to follow Jesus each and every day. Uh-huh. 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 Oh! So they say that every time. So that one's in the book too, okay? Then the next thing you could do, next technique, is a focal point. A focal point. Get the kids looking at something. The first time I saw this one, we had one class that was, their little name that they'd given themselves was the little fireflies, and had a camping scene in there. And they were gathered, I looked in, and they were gathered around their little campfire. And they all had one of these. It's a stick with a cotton ball on the end. And they were holding it over the fire as the teacher told the story, all of them, with their eyes on, because you do not want your cotton ball to burn. Okay? And here, I'm telling you, I was just mesmerized. I was like, oh my goodness, my teacher is so creative. And I thought, how's that going to work? And I watched, and in a few seconds, as she's telling the story, they would go. And every 10 seconds or so, they would keep turning the cotton ball. And I thought, now how do you bring this to a close? And she had her Bible in her lap, and she just closed the Bible, and she said, and that's where we're going to stop today. And those kids hopped up, and they went over, and they threw their sticks in a bin, and they went, okay, what's next? It was like mental whiplash to me. How did you shift like that? I need an easy transition to move on. But they did. It was no big deal. Last week, my daughter-in-law used this and had 34 kids in the group. And I have an indoor campfire. IndoorCampfire.com. Write it down. It's the coolest thing ever. It's just a little campfire that you sit inside, you turn it on, and it's got these pieces of material and colored lights underneath of it. It dances. It looks like the real thing. You put a little wood around the outside of it. We had that set up, and she gave one of those sticks to every one of those kids, 30-plus kids around that little campfire, only she gave them a real marshmallow, a mini marshmallow. I did not take a picture. I don't know why I didn't do it. It was the funniest looking thing. But they're all just holding out their sticks with that little bitty tiny marshmallow on the end. But she used that as a focal point. So you can use something like that. One of the things that you can use is a candle. Now, whenever you're using candles, you have to make sure that you set out your parameters, your boundaries, your rules, and anyone who crosses that boundary, who doesn't obey that, just one time, it's one strike, you're out. That's it. It's too dangerous, and that's what you have to say. The candle is beautiful, and we want to use it, and it's really a great way to have a nice place to tell a story. But you see the masking tape circle around the candle? No one crosses that line. No one goes at the candle. And I tell you, all it takes is one time, and you go, we're going to turn the lights on. And you blow out the candle, and that's all. You don't make a big deal out of it. Everybody knows who did it. The next time you put the candle out, there'll be like this unofficial little troop around that kid that messed it up last time, ready to clobber him if he does anything. Candles have this unbelievable way to capture adults, teenagers, kids. You can have total chaos. Total chaos. Kids bouncing off the walls, the noise level off the charts, and you turn out the lights and light a candle, and it'll go, and I'm talking 5th grade, 6th grade boys. You do that, and they'll go, ah. And it just gets quiet. It's just a crazy thing. So the candle, I mean, where do you tell stories? Around a campfire, right? And everybody just watches. As they hear the story, they're just watching the fire dance. Another thing that we did as a focal point, I shared a room with the adult Sunday school class. We did kids' church in there after the adult Sunday school class, but sometimes I'd had to go in there and set things up, and the adults were so wonderful, they would just live around it. One day they went in, and there was a 4x4 post about this high standing right in the middle of their classroom. And then I had gone to Walmart and gotten all kinds of scraps of material and cut them about a foot wide and then made them, oh my goodness, probably 15 feet long. Okay, I stapled one end to the top of that post, and then I pulled it out. Did the next one, pulled it out. Did the next one, pulled it out, until I had this giant pinwheel like that. I brought the kids in, and I said, I want you to sit back where if you reach, you can't touch the material. Okay. They sat there, and I told them the story of the woman who made her way along the ground to get to Jesus, and then she reached out to touch the hem of his garment. And when I got to that place, I said, okay, kids, reach out and touch the hem of Jesus' garment. And they knew what I was talking about. And they all just waddled up and reached out, and they grabbed a piece of that material, and they held on. Not one of them dropped it, and they scooted all the way up to where it was comfortable and just listened to me talk on the lesson. But they had something, a focal point that helped them do that. Okay. Trying to figure out, I want to make sure I give you as much as I can in this amount of time. Focal point. The next thing is the number 2 way, still internationally, the number 2 way, it was number 1 for time ever until just the last few years. The number 2 way now to tell Bible stories is using puppets. What's the first way now? What's the most popular way to tell stories now? Video, okay? That's the most common way to tell stories. But you buy puppets, and you can easily spend $100 on a nice puppet. Easily, okay? But there are other ways to do it where you still have some cool puppets. One is this. These are called Puppet on a Stick. You can get them from educationalinsights.com, and they come 3 in a package for under $25. And I'm telling you, these things, I've had these forever. And they have 2 ways. So your preschoolers, you have a shy kid that won't pray, won't respond or anything, put a puppet in his hand, and he'll start talking. Because now it's his puppet that's talking. But you can pull on the bottom, or it has a tab right here. Depends on what your development of your child is. If they're better at pulling, they'll want to do this. If they're better at pushing, they'll do this. And they come 3 in a package. So I got one for Bowen, one for Kendall, and one for me. And one day I was talking to Kendall. I just had it right here in front of my face, and we were having a conversation. And I got tired. And I just put it down, and Kendall looked at me, and she goes, "Go away, Grandma, go away." Okay, sorry. You do not need fancy stages. You do not need to be a ventriloquist. Just put it up there, and they will just start watching the puppet. Now, this one is part of what they call a undersea one. It has a crab, and this is a clam. Then there's a set of aliens. There are all kinds, but they will last you forever, and I highly recommend them. Now, one day, and this happens, maybe once a year, I thought about cleaning my house. I don't clean. It's easier to move. So I got out my dust mitt, and then it started speaking to me because I didn't want to dust. And I thought, I think you're a puppet. And I could hear it saying, make me a puppet. I want to be your puppet. And I said, okay. So I went and I glued 2 Google eyes on my dust mitt. And I have a puppet. Now, I discovered something interesting about puppets. They don't have to have mouths. All they have to have are eyes. You put eyes on anything, and it will become a puppet. I'm serious. Your assignment is to go buy 1 package of these the largest Google eyes you can find at the hobby store. Spend $1.69 and get you a set of them. Then you walk through your house and put them on anything and everything. On the toaster. Your toaster can talk when you put those eyes on there. Try it. It'll say, put some toast in me, please. I want to pop it up. Yeah. Put them on a pair of house slippers. Put them on a pillow. I got some really big ones, and they have ones that are like this big, like $5 a set you can buy online. I haven't gotten them yet, but it's on my Christmas wish list. But I'm just thinking, I'm going to put those on the back of Ray's chair. So when he sits down, it's like you're being watched. Someone's watching TV with you. But anything. And those mitts, they're $1 at the dollar store. This costs you $1. Put the eyes on. Every child can have their own puppet. And don't be limited to this one. You know, this is his tall, skinny teenage brother. And the other one, I guess, didn't make it in here. But there's one that you can just put on a finger, and it's a little baby puppet. And it's just a little finger puppet. Take socks. Sock puppet's been around for a long time, but I have a friend that said, I'm going to make some donkeys. And she said, do you want me to make you one? I said, yeah. I need a donkey sock puppet. So just put Google eyes on anything. Now, the other, you guys, before the end of this workshop, you're going to go, I knew she was a little strange, but she got stranger during that one. I had a piece of transparency laying there, and I thought, I wonder what I could do with that. So I went over got me a Sharpie and went over to the mirror. I really don't have a whole lot of free time, but what I do have, I enjoy myself. So I just took a marker and made a little point here and here where my eyebrows started. I made a point on my nose, and I just kind of like put a few dots, and then I just kind of colored it in and everything. And I held it up, and I laughed at myself forever. But how easy is this? The kids can do this. You know, I just put it, okay, mark it, and you draw them, and they'll look at each other. But they're puppets now. Now I'm a puppet, and I'm a man with a mustache and a goatee. Yep. Okay, so that's a whole bunch of different puppets for you. Oh, whoa. This is another really, really good one. Flannel graph. It's been around forever. I was raised on flannel graph. It was Wilma Sexton's only way. She was my kid's church teacher. It was her only way to tell stories was using a flannel graph. And bless her heart, she only had one man. Part of the intrigue of going to church was trying to figure out who that man was going to be that week. Was he going to be Jesus or Peter or Moses or David or Joshua? Who was he going to be? But she could make the most incredible backgrounds. And that was, wow, she painted this background. But what I want, flannel graph is fine. But if you use it every week, it's not a good technique. Okay? Anything that you use over and over, and it's the only way you teach, then it becomes a bad technique. If I use Captain Kidd every week, it's a bad way to tell stories. You've got to keep changing and finding what's the best way for that particular story. Take flannel graph. I call this flannel graph on steroids. What you want to get is a piece of board and cover it in black, solid black flannel. All right? Then you're going to take your character pieces, and you can get this clip art offline. You don't have to buy sets or anything. You just want to get whatever pieces you want and run them on neon cardstock. You can get it at Walmart. Yellow works best, the bright yellow. And so here I've got the one I usually show is in Mississippi right now at my next workshop. But this is just a boat that has some water here. So it's on this. On the back, I put the scratchy part, one piece of the scratchy part of Velcro, stick it on there. So now it's going to stick on that black flannel that we made the board out of, right? And here's the kicker. You go to Walmart and you get you a black light. They are under $20. You can get them all sizes. Little, I like the big long ones. And you lay it underneath that black board. And everything there will start glowing. All of your pieces light up in the dark. Now, you want to have a room that you can get dark. We had one classroom that had no windows. It was a little bitty one, and we would cram 40 kids in this 10 by 11 room. We painted the walls brown. It was concrete block, and we made it in. It was supposed to look like the inside of a clubhouse, like a tree house. And so we painted windows on there, but it was dark. And if I'd say, hey, we're going to the tree house, the kids would go, Black Light Story! Yeah, they love them. Love them, love them. You got to make sure that you've, if you're wearing white, you're going to glow. You want to make sure you brush your teeth really well, or all that stuff. You know, remember those tests they used to give you, and they lit up your teeth, and they go, oh my goodness, look, you didn't brush your teeth. Well, that's what a black light will do to you, okay? So brush your teeth really well, and then you start moving the pieces around like it's a flannel graph, and you tell the stories, and the kids love them. It may be their favorite way to do it. So I love to tell the story of Nicodemus going to Jesus in the middle of the night. Yeah. He says, Jesus, and he talks about being born again. Great way to do that. So that one has its stories. You don't do every story, Blacklight story. All right. One more I want to tell you about, and there's still another 10 or 12 that will be described in the book. First-person stories where you become the person that's experiencing what's going on in the Bible are wonderful. I love to tell the story of little Samuel in the temple when he finally says, here I am. Yeah. What do you want, God? But this is one coming up for Christmas. This is a good one. If you can find stickers that go with a whole Bible story and give each kid a set of the stickers, or I like to just go online and find the things that I'm looking for in clip art and put them on little round Avery labels, run them on those. So every kid has a set of stickers, a sheet that has all the little pieces of the story. So Christmas, you can get those. Some of the pieces are missing, so I made a few more. And you give the kids a blank bingo sheet like this. This one's only a 4x4. You can get 3x3s. Just Google template bingo, and they have them all different sizes. So I give the kids a blank one like this because if you've ever tried making your own, you don't just make one and run copies because every one of them has to be different for the game to work. So you give them to the kids, and then you start telling the story. And you say, there were shepherds. Oh, shepherds. Does anybody have a shepherd sticker? Yeah. I said, okay. Well, put it on your sheet anywhere you want to. Don't even look at your neighbor. You don't want to put it where they put it. Put it anywhere you want to. Okay. And then I'll start again after they've done that and say, okay, there were shepherds out watching their sheep. Oh, sheep. Do you have any sheep? Yes, I have sheep. Okay, let's put the sheep on. Put your sheep anywhere. Yeah, there. And while they were out there, an angel appeared to them. Oh, do you have an angel? Yes, I have an angel. Put an angel on. And then there were a multitude of angels. Do you have a whole bunch of angels? Yeah, put that on there. And you go through the whole story, and they get a card that looks like this. But theirs is different than their friends. Then you take your one that you've made up, and you cut all of these little things into little squares and drop them in a hat or a container of some kind. And now you're going to play. Give them little markers of some kind. And you say, okay, I'm pulling one out. I pulled out a stable. Before you can cover up your stable, somebody's got to tell me, what did this stable have to do with the story? And when someone answers, you go, okay, cover up your stable. I'll draw out another one. What a great story reinforcement, because now they're not just taking it in sequence. They have to go, okay, in the story, that whole thing, where was that and what was its significance? Then you collect these and you put them in your file because in a couple of weeks you're going to have a Christmas party and you go, hey, we've got Christmas bingo already made up. Thanks, kids. Okay? And, and you've got that all done and ready to go. Well, there are more. Some of you saw Tater Tales the other day, and you can use Mr. Potato Head to tell stories along with Legos. There's just so many ways. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to learn different storytelling techniques. Know what you have in your storehouse. Then when you get ready to teach a story, you look at it. And you say, is this a costume character? I'm not seeing it. Are there 3 things that repeat in this story? No. Is there some mystery to this? Does it happen at night? Could be a black light story. Yep. So choose the one that fits that story best. And do not feel like you can only use the ones that I've shared with you. Because I tell you, I discover new ones all the time. Watch how stories are told. Watch how they're told. Let your kids tell stories into a video camera. Let them do it. And then take it to another class and show it to them. They love the technology. So even if you're afraid of it, if you're afraid and you're technologically challenged like I am, find a second grader that can help you, okay? Because they do understand. They'll even, 3-year-olds will take it off of your cell phone and fix it up for you. Well, thank you very much. Let's close right now in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for your story. Thank you that we can live and we can live out your story, that it isn't over yet, and that we are part of it, Lord. Help us not just to look back, but also to see how your story is being written every day. Lord, help us to bring it to life. Help us to make it real to the kids that we get to be with. Lord, we love your word. We love it, and we want others to love it like we do. Please bless all these wonderful, devoted, passionate people who are sitting in front of me. Be with them, Lord. And all the children said, amen. Go get them. Arg!